So how difficult can it be to define accessibility? Apparently, from all indications, it's not that easy. So I'm Annette Borbener from Nothing Without Us, Stories and Discussions of Meaningful Inclusion. I am a 70-ish-year-old woman with short gray hair, dark rimmed eyeglasses. I think today I'm wearing some iridescent earrings. And I'm sitting in a power wheelchair. So before we talk about accessibility, please subscribe if you haven't already. You can subscribe for free, but if also leave me a like or a comment, let me know what you think. It will help the algorithm, and it will also help keep this going. All right, so back to accessibility. The Merriam-Webster dictionary has a number of definitions. When we're talking about disability, the best one is easily used or accessed by people with disabilities. Access they define as permission, liberty, or ability to enter, approach, or pass to and from a place, or to approach or communicate with a person or thing. And ability is the capacity and the fitness or the tendency to act. So how does this relate to places and events? In particular, when you're talking about accessibility for those of us with disabilities, we could look at, compliance with regulations. That is a start. However, most regulations define a bare minimum when it comes to accessibility. You meet this bare minimum and you probably can't get sued, but it doesn't necessarily include everyone, does it? There are some who still won't have access. For example, if you give people 2 weeks to request an ASL interpreter in a state like Rhode Island, where it takes a month or more, will your event be accessible if they can't get the interpreter? Probably not. Or if a bar is required in a room, I'm thinking in a bathroom in particular, if that bar is required, but it's placed in a location that could cause a person using it to fall rather than assist the user in maintaining stability, how can it create accessibility? Right height, right size, wrong location. There are other examples, but it appears that compliance is not quite enough, is it? So what else could we add to the definition of accessibility? Could add usability. What happens though if you place a sign in Braille on a wall? How is a blind person going to know enough to look there for it? Not very usable, is it? So the example I gave about placing a bar for stability shows that it's not very usable either. So also, when the minimum width for doors was established, wheelchairs were all pretty narrow. Now we know that if wheels are cammed, people have more stability and can go a little faster, but it makes the bottom of the wheelchair a little wider. Or if adult power chairs are used, we can improve our mobility, but are the same doorways accessible? They could be a bit more challenging. And then what if there are obstacles in the prescribed turning space? Or what if the turning space is not really properly located? So all of these, tend to address whether or not an accommodation or design, an aspect of design, a design element is really accessible. Because if it meets the minimum qualifications, but it's not usable, doesn't work, does it? So from this, we can conclude, or we should, that compliance must be accompanied by usability. But is that enough? what about something can be usable by one person and not by another, right? Yeah, in fact, that's one of the things that gets thrown at people with disabilities when they're trying to find access. Well, that person can use it, why not you? So maybe we need to add inclusive. So we've got compliance, usable, and how about inclusive? You know, people with disabilities come in all shapes and sizes. So does adaptive equipment. And as technology changes, the equipment changes, and sometimes adding more features adds more bulk to the equipment. But also, disability is not absolute in that it means no ability at all for everyone. So, for example, some people who are blind can see shadowy shapes. Some people who are deaf can hear some sounds, and some people with mobility disabilities can stand. People need to understand that. If something is inclusively accessible, then it should be usable for all people with disabilities, not just those who can a little or those who cannot at all. People should not make judgments based on their belief of what a person can or should be able to do. So you need to give some room for people who don't understand. And I want to, because some people do not. And there are people that won't give room for any variance. And it's hard for me to give leeway to those who judge. You know, if you don't understand, you don't understand. But please don't judge people. It's difficult enough for individuals with disabilities to have to always ask for what they need because the world is not made for us. There is an emotional toll to this. And adding judgment is just plain disrespectful and burdensome. So accessibility, now we've got for definition, how does accessibility is compliance with regulations in a usable manner. It needs to be as inclusive as possible and must be handled in a respectful manner. How does that sound? Does that sound like a good definition of accessibility? It didn't take me a year to do that one, did it? No, but then I'm used to it. So I thank you for listening. I'm Annette from Nothing Without Us. If you like this episode and want to hear more like it, please subscribe, leave me a like and a comment. I really do need to grow. So please tell your friends. I'm trying to reach my first 100 members. So please tell your friends they can see this podcast at patreon.com/nothingwithoutus. You can find it on YouTube, on Spotify, and on your favorite audio platform. I don't think I'm on Apple Audio yet, but those I can be. So while subscriptions are free, you can see my new sub-series, Bitch on Wheels, on the ally or activist tiers. And I am ready to start adding a monthly discussion group on Discord, a public discussion group on Discord. So, but Bitch on Wheels is a little edgier, maybe sarcastic, maybe angry or humorous, although sometimes I think some of those characteristics are starting to slide in more often than I planned. But at any rate, Bitch on Wheels allows me to be freer about it. Bitch on Wheels is available again on the ally or activist tiers. And on the activist tier, you're going to be able to participate in a monthly discussion on Discord. So you can also find me on LinkedIn and Blue Sky. So until the next Nothing Without Us, I'm Annette.